So this is a series of lectures about the historical Jesus, about Jesus as a historical person. And this first lecture is titled Two Jesuses, because there are really, I think, two paradigms or two predominant ways in our culture of talking about and thinking about and following Jesus. So the first way that I want to talk about is really a very American way of thinking about Jesus, because it's rooted historically in the Second Great Awakening and in American evangelicalism. It's very popular and has broad appeal in our culture. So this way of thinking about Jesus is that Jesus' message, what Jesus was about in his life on earth, is about how we can be saved and live forever with him in heaven. And so, how do you go to heaven? Well, you believe the right things about Jesus, right? And so, there's a very subtle shift that happens in this kind of way of thinking about Jesus that you might not notice. It becomes, instead of following the religion of Jesus, right? What is it that he was talking about, and what is it that he dedicated his life to? Instead, we make it a religion about Jesus, right? So we make it's belief-centric. Instead of following the things that Jesus did and taught and said, we want to believe in Jesus, believe the right things about Jesus. And so what is it that you need to believe about Jesus in order to be saved and to go to heaven? Well, primarily, it's you believe that Jesus is God. And so all of Jesus's signs and wonders become ways of proving that he's God. His resurrection proves that he is God. And so if you believe in Jesus as God, then you've believed the right thing and you can go to heaven when you die. Well, this idea of Jesus as God is kind of interesting. You might think that it's the most sort of orthodox way to be a Christian, right? To believe that Jesus is God. And that's true. In Orthodox Christianity, Orthodox with a small o, meaning the broad tradition of Christianity, we do talk about Jesus as fully God. But we also talk about Jesus as fully human. So the way that I think about this with students often is I say, how is it, do you think, that Jesus learned to tie his sandals? Well, he learned to tie his sandals in the ordinary way. His mother bent down by his knee and told him to make a bunny ear and loop it around and pull it through, right? And he tried and he got frustrated and he failed and he tried again and failed again and got frustrated again, and all of that until he finally became proficient at tying his sandals. Just like you learned to tie your shoes. Because Jesus is fully human. And that means there was a time when Jesus didn't know how to tie his sandals. There are things that he doesn't know and can't do. Jesus didn't know that the earth was a sphere. He didn't know that it rotated around the sun. There are lots of things that Jesus, as a person of history, didn't know, and lots of things that he wasn't able to do. That's what Orthodox Christianity teaches, because Jesus is fully human. And whatever we believe about Jesus' status as divine, as a God, can't take away from his being a fully human person. And so often I think when people think about Jesus as God, it slips into actually a heresy that in Christianity is called docetism, from the Greek dokeo, which means to seem, to appear. And so it's like people say, well, yeah, of course, Jesus looked human. He seemed human. He walked around in human skin and with human hair. But he was really God. He really had all the magic tricks up his sleeve. And I want to suggest that that's not quite right. That's not quite the Christian way of thinking about Jesus. And in fact, that Jesus is fully human, and his humanness is just important as his divine status. So the second way of thinking about Jesus that I want to talk about is actually a much older, much more ancient way of thinking about Jesus, and it's really rooted in the New Testament and in the earliest church's experience of this person. And so what they noticed is that Jesus' message was not really about going to heaven when you die. Jesus said exceedingly little about an afterlife, actually. His message was about how do we live a life of justice and love right here and right now in our own lives, right where we are. And so when you take Jesus' message that way, then instead of the Christian life being about believing in Jesus, it becomes about following the way of Jesus. Rather than being belief-centric, it is way-centric. How do we follow the way of Jesus? And so whatever you believe about Jesus' relationship to God, Jesus' status of divinity, this way of thinking about Jesus asks the question, what about this remarkable human life? If we're going to follow in the way of Jesus, we need to know what he was about. What did he do? What did he say? What did he teach? What were his motivations for acting in the way he acted? And so this series is about learning what we can know about the life of Jesus as he actually lived in Nazareth and Galilee 2,000 years ago. What was this human life about?